I didn't move to Eden Hills for the community. I moved for the silence. After 15 years with the DEA, working undercover, infiltrating cartels, dismantling drug rings from the inside out, I craved predictability. A steady morning routine. Grass I could mow myself. Neighbors who waved from a distance and left it at that. Eden Hills promised that. Private roads, gated entry, strict bylaws, and homes arranged in perfect symmetry, like a suburban diorama. I paid in full, signed the HOA agreement without a second glance, and figured I'd disappear into the background. But I didn't know Eden Hills had its own drug war. Only here, the kingpin wore yoga pants and a wine-colored visor. Her name was Karen Whitlock. I met her on move-in day. She stood in my driveway before the moving truck had even pulled away, clipboard in hand, smile like stretched plastic. "Welcome to Eden Hills," she chirped, her tone laced with ownership rather than hospitality. "I'm Karen, HOA president. We like to get acquainted early, keep things neighborly." She handed me a thick binder labeled Community Standards and Covenant Rules. I took it out of politeness, already noting the weight. No one ever needed this many pages to explain how to live peacefully. No outdoor laundry. No commercial vehicles. No security cameras facing public walkways. "We value aesthetics and discretion here," she said, eyes flicking to the corner-mounted lens I was installing. "Understood," I replied, offering nothing more. I had learned in my line of work that saying less usually did more. The first week was quiet. I set up my home, got the security system online, and ran a few sweeps just to be safe. Old habits die hard. I wasn't on a case anymore, but I liked knowing who passed by my gate at 2 a.m. By week 2, I received my first HOA notice. Violation. Unregistered vehicle. It referred to my black Dodge Charger, which still bore federal plates. I called the number listed on the notice. Karen answered. "Federal credentials don't exempt anyone from registration," she said crisply. "We have community rules." "It's a government vehicle," I replied. "It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the Department of Justice." A pause. "We prefer not to have unusual vehicles in driveways," she said, voice tightening. "They draw attention." I didn't respond. I simply reparked the car in the garage and logged the incident mentally, the way I used to tag cartel lieutenants who gave off the wrong vibe, low-grade threat, possible escalation. Then came the trash can citation. Then the complaint about my excessive night activity. I was being watched, not by the cartel or a foreign operative this time, but by a neighborhood tyrant with too much time and too little fear. It wasn't just me. I started noticing the patterns. An elderly couple 2 houses down got fined for flying a military flag outside regulation hours. A single mom at the end of the cul-de-sac had her flower beds uprooted after Karen declared them non-compliant with landscape harmony. Power in Eden Hills didn't come from a badge or a paycheck. It came from the bylaws, and Karen wielded them like a weapon. I kept quiet, but I didn't retreat. I reinforced my perimeter, replaced standard deadbolts with biometric locks, calibrated motion sensors to track movement within 3 feet of my property line. I'd faced down men with machetes in the favelas of Bogota. I wasn't about to be bullied by a clipboard. But Karen didn't understand escalation. She only understood submission. One night, while reviewing camera footage, I caught a figure ducking behind my vehicle in the carport. Hooded. Moving quickly. Slipping something underneath the wheel well. I paused the footage. Rewound. Zoomed. It was Bob Whitlock, Karen's husband. The pouch he placed under my car was black, no markings. But I'd seen plenty like it before, small enough to stash narcotics, big enough to ruin a life if planted in the right hands. I leaned back in my chair, the cold realization settling in. This wasn't about rules anymore. Karen didn't want compliance. She wanted removal. And she was about to learn she picked the wrong guy to frame. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, but anticipation. Karen had crossed a line, and she thought she could do it in the shadows. I'd spent years dismantling criminal networks that operated on fear, control, and silence. This was no different, just dressed in cul-de-sacs and bake sales. At 5 a.m., I pulled on jeans, holstered my off-duty weapon, and stepped outside. Dew clung to the grass like frost. The charger sat exactly where I'd left it, the black pouch still wedged under the rear wheel well. I didn't touch it. Instead, I called the precinct. This is Marcus Lane. Badge number 17 to 529. DEA. I'd like to request a patrol unit at my residence. Possible narcotics tampering. Non-emergency, but I need an official record. The dispatcher didn't ask questions. My clearance level did the talking. I requested they arrive late morning, public enough to have an audience. While I waited, I made coffee and watched Karen pace her front lawn. She kept glancing over, pretending to trim the hedges with kitchen scissors. Her nerves showed. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know I'd seen everything. At exactly 10:28 a.m., the black and white patrol car rolled into the cul-de-sac. Two officers stepped out. One older, built like a linebacker. The other fresh-faced, hand twitching near his belt. Karen emerged instantly, waving like she'd summoned them. "Officers," she called, approaching with a speed unbecoming of her age. Thank goodness. I was just saying to my husband this morning, something had to be done. I stepped out of my front door as they crossed the driveway. "Sir," the older officer said, "we received an anonymous tip that there may be illegal substances in or around your vehicle." I nodded, calm. "You're welcome to search it," I said. "Here are the keys." The rookie took them hesitantly. The older one gave me a second glance. He recognized the tone, the stillness, the way I stood without flinching. Karen lingered behind them, arms folded, fake concern painted across her face. "You know," she said sweetly, "he's been acting erratic. Strange hours, packages coming at all times. And that car, well, it doesn't look registered." The older cop cut his eyes toward her, but said nothing. The rookie returned moments later, holding the pouch with gloved hands. "Found this," he said. "Rear wheel well." Karen gasped theatrically. "I knew it," she whispered. The older officer unzipped the pouch, examined the contents, and then turned to me. "Sir, what do you know about this?" I pulled out my badge and flipped it open. Special Agent Marcus Lane, DEA. Karen's mouth dropped open mid-breath. Both officers straightened. The younger one stepped back, as if the pouch burned. "Federal investigation?" the senior officer asked. "No," I said. "Personal residence. Just moved in. But clearly, I need to open a new file." Karen's voice cracked. "There must be some mistake." "I didn't mean, I only thought." I turned to her, letting my eyes hold hers just long enough. "You filed the tip, didn't you?" Her face flushed a bright, blotchy red. I thought he was dangerous." I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear the drop in my tone. "You planted drugs on a federal agent," I said quietly. "That's not a neighborhood complaint. That's a felony." She sputtered something unintelligible and retreated a step, but the damage was done. The officers didn't move to arrest her yet, but I could feel the shift. Her armor cracked. Her story threadbare. "I'll need to keep the pouch," I said to the senior officer. "Chain of custody. Internal reporting." "Understood," he replied, nodding stiffly. Karen turned and fled across the lawn, nearly tripping on her ornamental path lights. Bob stepped onto the porch, but didn't speak. Just stared, ashen-faced, as his wife stormed inside. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The trap hadn't just sprung. It had snapped the snare tight around her. I went back inside, uploaded the footage, backed it up 3 times, and started a fresh case file. Eden Hills HOA. Whitlock incident. I wasn't interested in petty revenge. I wanted documentation, due process, and a trail so solid no lawyer could poke a hole through it. Karen had fired the first shot. She just didn't realize I was trained to fire back. 2 days after the attempted frame job, Karen's house went dark. Curtains drawn. Garage unopened. No morning patrols, with her clipboard. It was the quiet before a storm, but the storm was mine. While she retreated, I moved forward. The first step was digging, not into her past, but into the HOA's foundation. Eden Hills HOA had always projected order. But when people wrap rules around personal grudges, cracks appear. I filed a request for HOA financials. Under the bylaws, any homeowner could inspect the books. Karen, as president, was legally obligated to comply. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th, I sent a second, certified letter. On the 5th, I emailed the HOA's management company. No response. That's when I showed up, suited, badged, and carrying a federal subpoena template. It was just for show, but the receptionist didn't know that. I'm conducting an internal inquiry involving a homeowners association president. I need the Eden Hills records. Now. 15 minutes later, I walked out with a flash drive and 3 years of expense reports. Back home, I started sifting. I didn't have to look far. $18,000 labeled community event planning, but no events had occurred. $11,000 in landscaping invoices from Whitlock Lawn Services. Funny, Karen's husband was a dentist. $7,500 for security upgrades, though the community had no cameras or gates newer than a decade. I wasn't just dealing with a control freak. I was dealing with a thief. And she wasn't working alone. The HOA board, 4 other names, were all complicit. Approving budgets. Rubber stamping reimbursements. Likely enjoying kickbacks. It was a quiet, suburban racket hidden behind patio parties and power wash driveways. I compiled everything. Dates. Amounts. Names. Then I called a friend, Agent Varela, Internal Affairs. I've got an HOA president skimming tens of thousands, attempted to plant narcotics on me when I got too visible. Think your team wants a look. He whistled low. Send the files. We'll take it from there. I didn't stop there. Karen had used her position to harass, intimidate, and punish anyone who stepped out of line. I knocked on doors, subtle, respectful. People were wary at first, but when I introduced myself and mentioned the HOA, the floodgates opened. The elderly veteran fined for his flag? Karen had screamed at his wife during chemo treatment. The single mom whose garden was uprooted? She'd refused to babysit Karen's grandchildren for free. Even the teenage boy across the street, his bicycle had been confiscated for being unsightly. He was autistic. The bike was his therapy. Each story painted the same picture: control by fear. Microaggressions turned systemic. And behind it all, Karen's iron grip. I created a dossier, photos, testimonies, footage. Then I made copies. One for Varela, one for the county prosecutor, one for myself, and one for Karen. That evening, I hand-delivered it. She opened the door a crack, eyes darting. You have no right. I held up the folder. Everything you've done. Every cent you took. Every life you trampled. It's all in here. She reached for it like it was poison. I'm reporting you, she hissed. This is harassment. I stepped back, calm and slow. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. Just make sure your lawyer reads the last page. It has the list of federal codes you violated. She slammed the door. But I'd seen her face, pale, twitching. She was unraveling. The next morning, Bob's truck was gone. Word spread that he'd left for his brothers in Oregon. That night, a moving truck backed into their driveway under cover of darkness. By the weekend, the house was empty. Karen fled Eden Hills the same way she ruled it, without a word, without apology, without shame. But the fallout remained. A month later, a public notice went out. Special audit underway. Eden Hills HOA. Residents demanded transparency. The board collapsed. New elections were held. And for the first time in years, neighbors smiled without looking over their shoulders. I didn't run for the board. I didn't need a title. I already had peace. But the camera stayed. So did the reinforced locks. I'd earned a quiet life, but I'd never forget how quickly shadows could fall, even in perfect neighborhoods. The grass grew longer that spring, and no one complained. Karen's absence left behind something unexpected: silence. Not the hollow, eerie kind, but the sort of stillness that follows a storm. You could almost hear the neighborhood exhale. Kids biked again. Flags flew. The Jenkins family built a raised garden bed out front, and instead of citations, they got compliments. The neighborhood cookout, the first in over 5 years, happened without incident. Someone even brought a karaoke machine. No clipboard in sight. Karen was gone, but her shadow took longer to lift. The new HOA board, comprised of 3 retirees and a nurse, operated with transparency. Budgets were posted online. Fines had to be approved by a majority. And every resident received a vote. The power that once sat in Karen's palm now belonged to the people. But not everyone was ready to let go of the past. One evening, as I was closing the garage, Mrs. Devlin from 3 doors down approached. "You're the reason she's gone, aren't you?" she asked, arms folded, voice low. I didn't lie. I gave people what they needed to see. She looked me over, eyes sharp, thoughtful. She tried to evict my son. Said his wheelchair ramp was a violation. Thank you. I nodded. You don't owe me anything. I know, but justice does. That was the thing. I hadn't done it for praise or revenge. I'd done it because some battles need fighting, even when they come dressed as neighborhood disputes. Especially then. A week later, a letter arrived from Agent Varela. The DOJ had opened a formal investigation into HOA financial abuses across the state. Karen's case was now Exhibit A. She opened a door we've been trying to crack for years, he wrote. Turns out a lot of HOAs think nonprofit means unaccountable. Thanks for lighting the match. I didn't smile, but I felt it. That quiet, internal click of things falling into place. One night in early summer, I sat on my back porch, nursing a beer, when a familiar sound reached me, tires rolling softly over gravel. A minivan. Blue. New plates. It pulled into the old Whitlock driveway. A woman stepped out, early 40s, brown hair in a loose ponytail. She looked around, clutching a folder to her chest. Her daughter, maybe 10, peeked from behind her, cradling a small poodle. She caught me watching. Hi, she called nervously. We just moved in. Is this the kind of place where people talk to each other, or? I stood. It is now. She smiled. Later that week, I helped her install a mailbox. Her name was Laura. Divorced, accountant, starting over. Her daughter, May, had autism, and the poodle was a therapy dog. Is the HOA strict? She asked while tightening the screws. I paused. It used to be, I said. Now it's just a group of people trying not to mess it up. She smiled again. It was the kind of question people used to ask in fear. Now, they asked out of curiosity. By August, Eden Hills felt like a neighborhood again, not a kingdom. People shared power tools. Front porches were alive. Halloween decorations popped up in September, and no one fined anyone for early spider webs or blinking pumpkins. But me, I remained watchful. You don't spend 20 years in the DEA and unlearn vigilance. Still, I was no longer a man guarding against attack. I was a man protecting peace. One Sunday, as I swept my driveway, a boy biked past with a neon flag on his handlebar. He waved. Hi, Mr. Marcus. I waved back. Hey, Cole. His mother, the same woman Karen once tried to silence for planting tomatoes in plastic barrels, followed him with a smile and a nod. Sometimes, justice isn't about putting someone in cuffs. It's about removing fear, restoring balance, making a place livable again. Karen Whitlock thought she could rule with fear. She thought power made her untouchable. But she made one mistake. She messed with a man who understood the language of power better than she ever would. A man who didn't need to raise his voice or throw a punch, just shine a light. And the thing about light is, it never asks permission to burn the dark away.